First scripture lesson this morning is from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, verses 34 through chapter 16, verse 13. If you'd like to follow along in your pew Bibles, it can be found on pages 259 and 260. And I'll be reading from the Revised Standard Version. Listen for the Word of God. Then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house in Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death. But Samuel grieved over Saul. And the Lord repented that he had made Saul king over Israel. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, seeing I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons." And Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. And invite Jesse to the sacrifice. And I will show you what you shall do. And you shall anoint for me him whom I name to you." Samuel did what the Lord commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him trembling and said, "Do you come peaceably?" And he said, "Peaceably. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." And he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Jesse made Shammah pass by. And he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." And Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest. But behold, he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he comes here." And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. Here ends the reading of the Old Testament scripture reading this morning.
The next scripture reading is from Mark's Gospel, chapter 4, verses 26 through 34. Mark chapter 4, verse 26, 34. And then Jesus said, "This is what God's kingdom is like. It's as though someone scatters seed on the ground, but then sleeps and wakes night and day. The seed sprouts and grows, but the farmer doesn't know how. The earth produces crops all by itself, first the stalk, then the head, and then the full head of grain. Whenever the crop is ready, the farmer goes out to cut the grain, because it's harvest time." He continued, "What's a good image for God's kingdom? What parable can I use to explain it? Consider a mustard seed. When scattered on the ground, it's the smallest of all the seeds on earth. But when it's planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all vegetable plants. It produces such large branches that the birds in the sky are able to nest in its shade." With many such parables, he continued to give them the word as they were able to hear. He spoke to them only in parables, and then explained everything to his disciples when he was alone with them. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Just in case, I need to sit down. So explaining, right? We all know that it can carry positive and negative connotations with it. For instance, if you're entering a house and the first thing your mother or father says to you is, "Son, you have some explaining to do," you feel a little uneasy. I've heard that a couple times from my mom as I've come home over the years. Or if you're pulled over while driving your car by a police officer and he asks you, "Do you mind explaining to me why you are going so fast through a school zone?" Not sure. It just kind of makes us feel uneasy, right? Now that doesn't convey the warmest of feelings. When someone says, "Explain to me this," or "why you did this," or "what's going on here." Conversely, for showing or being introduced to something for the very first time, it helps us immensely to have it explained to us in detail, or at least explain to us why we're doing something, or how we're doing it, or what we need to be doing. You see, there's another situation in which explanations really help. The preparations for the unknown and the misunderstood. Now, sometimes there's a great fear in not explaining something that we don't know anything about. You should see when I try to describe the dentist for the first time to my kids before we actually go there. It's not the most relaxing and comfortable explanation. And there's drills, there's water, there's needles, there's a guy that has a mask. It's a little intimidating, right? But it does try to help calm our nerves. So this can happen for children and adults, people of all ages. I remember the day before school, a new school year, I'd always be a little anxious. I didn't know what it would be like, who I would meet, what classes I would have, what the next day might look like. So there's a little fear in not knowing what lies ahead. So explanations can kind of ease those fears. The same can be said for changes in a church. And nobody really likes changes, but if we can at least explain it, maybe that can help ease them a little bit more. So there's just a general overall fear of the unknown, provided we don't get any explanations. It can be dangerous to let the mind run a little wild with what we don't know and what we might not know about tomorrow or a certain instance or situation. So for the most part, though, we're a little cautious when we hear the words coming from someone that say, "Let me explain." So let me explain to you this grand adventure I had Tuesday night here at TPC. I have some keys that usually sit in my pocket, but they happen to find their way onto my desk this afternoon. And then I have my phone that bounces back between my phone or my pocket and my desk as well. And that, unfortunately, was also on my desk. So I was meeting with someone, and it was about 5 o'clock, and the storms, of course, are in full force, lightning all around, raining everywhere. So I walked them out and see if they need help getting to their car, if it's safe enough for them to, in fact, actually leave. So as I'm going out the door, I say goodbye, and I let go of the door, and I hear a little click. Oh boy, I thought, of all days. And of course, this is one day where I'm the only soul on this campus, right? Of course, there's usually teeming with people around here, but I'm stuck here locked out during the middle of a storm. Oh, great, I think. So I tried to break into the administration building to no avail. I didn't want to break anything, but I took some screens off, tried to open some doors, and thankfully they were locked, so good job on that front. So I couldn't go in there. Then I tried the sanctuary, no luck. I tried the fellowship hall, every single door, until I finally got around to the kitchen, and miraculously it was open. I'm saved, I thought. What a blessing. I'm safe from the rain and the lightning. I'm good to go. So I had to run and turn off the alarm. And then I was searching for a phone. Wouldn't you know, there's no phone in the fellowship hall. And so I knew there was one in Pastor Koo's office, and he locked his doors. And I'm thinking, oh, Pastor Koo, of all days to lock your office, had to be today. So no phone, no keys during the middle of a storm. I eventually walked out to the awning and hoping someone would just drive by and see my sad little puppy face and come try to get me some help. But that lasted about 10 minutes, and I even contemplated actually setting the alarm and setting it off and having the police show up so I could at least find some help. But then I got to thinking, well, I could picture it going like this. The police showing up, the gun's drawn, and then me standing here with my hands up saying, "Let me explain," right? Not the best situation. So I'll go on to step number 37 of my rescue plan. The Bandstock Church that meets here in the afternoon, they have a house actually in this neighborhood, just on the other side of this church. So I go and arrive to the house. I'm feeling good because I see 5 pairs of shoes outside the door, a car in the driveway. It's like, all right, there's got to be someone home. 90% sure someone's in this residence. Knock, knock, knock. No answer. Ring the doorbell. Nothing. I knock a little bit more, a little more vigorously so someone can hear me, and nothing. I don't know if they were just a little leery of this guy that's soaked in rain showing up on their doorstep, but they never answered. Now, I don't know what I would have said if they didn't speak English. I would have had to say, let me explain, and have, say, phone or some way to find help. So that plan didn't work. So here I am, still storming, still raining all around me. Oh, great. Well, I know what I'll do. I'll go to my trusty subway across the street, where they know me by name. So I go to the crosswalk, finally make it all the way around. It's probably 6 o'clock now. And I go in the restaurant, and I'm covered in rain, just head to toe soaked. I go in there and say, let me explain. I have no wallet. I have no keys. I have no phone. I'm locked out of my office. Can I use the phone? And I got the weirdest look that you can probably get from anybody, but she was gracious enough to let me use the phone. So I dialed one of 3 numbers I actually have memorized in this world. And I called my wife. Ring, ring, ring. No answer. Oh, great. I thought, what did you know? So I tried again, and she picked up, and my queen in shining armor came and rescued me. So that was the adventurous night. Yeah, you're going to clap for my rescue. I guess that's good. So that was my adventurous night of explanations, right? I just had to explain to people wherever I went. So the point of all this is that sometimes explanations are necessary, depending on the context and the situation. So no matter what course of action I would have taken or what I would have done, I would have had to tell someone, let me explain what's going on here. And people, when they hear that, automatically get a little defensive and put up some red flags saying, what's going on? What's the problem? What's the issue here in this situation? Yet at the same time, explanations can calm one's nerves. They can help us feel a little more at ease if we just explain something to someone. So it's all in an effort to calm those anxieties and those nerves and to make someone feel a little more easy. So on the flip side of that, we become a little more anxious when we hear that from somebody. If I was on the other side and I heard someone come in stopping to my restaurant or my house and they said, let me explain, I'd probably do a little step back and say, hold on a second. Let's see what else we can do before you explain to me what's going on. So we need these explanations to kind of clarify or expand on a little situations or scenarios. So I find it very curious that the 2 verses from this morning's readings from Mark proclaim the following. Mark writes, with many such parables, Jesus continued to give them the word, as much as they were able to hear. He spoke to them only in parables, and then explained everything to his disciples when he was alone with them. Did you catch that little nuance? That Jesus told many parables to many different people. Yet he only explained it to his close disciples when he was alone with them. We, as readers of Mark, don't even have the full explanation of what Jesus truly meant with this parable that he said. So for one reason or another, Jesus did not want to jump to the explanation portion of the parable and for those that were listening or reading. And I feel he did this for a very important reason. See, I would have thought an explanation for everyone would have been best from my perspective. And even when we did not get record of it, I figured it would still be helpful for someone to detail and explain what Jesus really meant. But I feel some of that was very intentional on behalf of Jesus. You see, when it comes to learning, experience and explaining might be the 2 strongest tools that we can have and use to learn and grow. And it seems Jesus wanted others to think about their own experiences with the parables that he told about life. The teachers, I feel, could attest to this best, right? But sometimes learning is more about going through the process and using one's own intuition and wisdom and experience and desire to learn, as opposed to being spoon-fed the answers. So the great thing about this parable is that it intersects our lives at very different points. Some of us may connect with it on one level. For others, it may speak to us or talk to us in another different way. And the perfect example was the adventure that I had Tuesday night. And now after the incident, I want to make sure that we have a phone in the fellowship hall I want to make sure that we take other safety measures to maybe help me back in those situations where I get stuck again. Someone from the earlier service told me, well, the moral of that story, Pastor Chris, is I guess you can't be alone. So there's just certain things that we learn through experience. If someone would have told me, oh, Pastor Chris, you need to make sure your keys are on a lanyard or you have one of those little belt loop things so your keys are never off your body, I never would have learned what I needed to learn that night. And as hard as that might be, that experience taught me a great deal of how bad of a burglar I would be and what we need to do here at the church. So there's certain things that life experience just teaches us that spoon-fed answers really can't. And so I think that Google is a great case study for that, right? How many times do we say, well, I'm going to Google that actor's name or that artist or the name of that movie? And then we do, and then moments or days later we forget what we learned. Or it doesn't stick with our brain. And so we just Google and forget. And it goes by the wayside. So I feel Jesus deep down knew this fact. And he wanted some to experience and think about what the parable meant for themselves, rather than him just giving us a straight and narrow answer. You know, I'm starting to think this Jesus guy really knew what he was talking about, right? The ways to help us learn and to help us grow, and not just be given the answers on a silver platter. So that's a big key to life. Learning, growing, and teaching and explaining to other people in our own life. The passing down what we have learned, and to our friends and our family alike. So that's why being a member of a family and a member of a church is so crucial and critical. We need to have this village and this tribal mentality that we can learn from one another and teach one another. But one that says we are in this unified and together. One that says we want the best for each and every one of us here, not just for me. But one that's devoid of any and all jealousy, hatred, and meanness, or one that lacks empathy, grace, or compassion. But we need to support one another, to love one another, and to teach one another. And yes, maybe even explain things to one another from time to time. On the same token, we need to be open to learning from God, and from people, and from our own experiences. So we need to teach one another, not to be afraid to hear that response back, or to receive that teaching. We can't automatically go in a defensive mode or kind of clam up anytime we hear feedback or maybe constructive criticism. If it's coming from a place of love and intended to help as opposed to hurt, then it's coming from a place that wants to see you grow. And that's where we should all be. A place where we want to help and love one another and support one another and help each other grow and learn and be the best disciples we can possibly be. So some people can learn and experience life differently. I like to think of it as a puzzle. Let's say we have a 1,000-piece puzzle and you're working with it with someone else. And due to the fact that we learn differently, some people might need to be shown where each and every individual piece goes. Say, here, take this piece, put it here. Take this piece, put it here. Some others can maybe just learn with a rough little guidance, saying, I'd recommend that we start with the edges, and then you can fill in as you see fit. Others can just see the box top and say, okay, I've got this. I'll put the puzzle together in 20 minutes. You see, we're all different. So when it comes to explaining, we need to explain accordingly to the person we're interacting with. And when we're learning, we need to learn and help others teach in a way that reaches all the different ways that we learn. So we need to learn where our piece fits in this life, and how it goes with the greater puzzle of God, and where we can find our place. So we need to approach life with a thirst to learn and a desire to teach. And by doing both of those key pieces to this big puzzle of God and life and love that we're supposed to be a part of, we can make the world a better place, one puzzle piece at a time. Amen.